Welcome to another UCL Fantasy video. This is going to be the best wildcard team. Let me know what you would change in this squad. And also, there's going to be some alternatives that I'll discuss as we go along. There's no set formula, but for me, this is what I would wildcard to if I still had the chip and I wanted to make multiple changes. So let's get straight into it. Ideally, you'd want 2 playing goalkeepers, but I've decided to spread the funds around across the rest of my squad. And the only recommendation I would make if you decide to adopt this approach and go for a pure bench fodder option as your second goalkeeper is do not go for a player from one of the big teams that you probably want to actually load up on. So for example, going for Carson or Stefan or even Kelleher, someone like that, maybe do not go for them and stick to just Alisson and then go for a player from a team that you probably won't load up on. If someone like Benfica, for example, or Villarreal, they might get knocked out, but you get someone who's 4 million and that saves you enough money to spend on the rest of your squad. That's the only real piece of advice I would give there. And in terms of the main goalkeeper, which is the most important thing, I would go for either Alisson or Ederson. It's up to you. If you back Manchester City to get a clean sheet or two across these quarterfinals, then I would go for Ederson, and then you could even triple up on their defence with Cancelo and Laporte. But we're going to talk about the defenders now, and I would actually rather balance out a little bit more with double Liverpool defence as well as double Manchester City. The 3 teams I back the most to progress to the next round are Manchester City, Bayern Munich and Liverpool, and I would try to cover all of those teams defensively. With Bayern Munich, I think they're the weakest of the lot defensively, so I would only go for one, and I would probably go for Nicolas Sula. But just bear in mind, Alphonso Davies could be back very soon, and it's really good to see that he's back training, but he might not be available as soon as Matchday 9, and either way, I think Sula offers a bit better value for money with the ball recoveries, and he's also nailed in that Bayern Munich defence at the moment. So I would go for Nicolas Sula, and then double up on Manchester City and Liverpool as we have Trent and Alisson to cover the Liverpool team. However, Trent Alexander-Arnold is currently injured and he might miss out in Game Week 31 against Watford, as well as that game against Benfica, the first leg. Although, let's wait and see. There's nothing concrete yet. I expect him to probably be available for this game, but you never know. So keep an eye on that, and you can always replace him with Robertson. But the reason why I've gone for Trent is because he's my ideal pick. He's a ball recovery machine, and he's much better in UCL Fantasy as a result compared to Robertson. In FPL, it's much more even, and that's where you can make a case for going for the Scotsman instead. But I would go for something like this, and once again, if you really back Manchester City, you can triple up on their defence with these 2 defenders you see on screen, as well as Ederson in goal, who I have in my current team selection. You can check out that video, it's already out on the channel. I've also gone for Laporte. I think he offers great value for money. He's the cheapest here, and he plays in arguably the best defence left in the Champions League, and City are now keeping those clean sheets in this competition. They kept none during the group stages, and Joao Cancelo is the highest scoring defender despite missing out in the second leg of the round of 16. And we've gone for Thiago Silva, but this could easily be Rudiger or Reece James. It all depends on the fitness of Reece James as well as which defender you prefer. But Rudiger and Thiago Silva are neck and neck. Thiago Silva is a bit cheaper and he gets more ball recoveries, and that's why I've decided to go for the Brazilian. But all of them are good options. And honestly, in terms of the Villarreal and Benfica defenders, despite how good Otamendi has been, for example, I probably wouldn't go for him because I don't expect a clean sheet across both legs for either team. You never know though, and they still offer really good value for money. But I personally would go for these 5 defenders, and there's always a Real Madrid defender if you back them a little bit more than Chelsea. But I definitely would go for at least 1 or 2 Manchester City defenders or defensive coverage. The same goes for Liverpool, and then 1 Bayern Munich defender. Let me know what you think of this backline, and now let's move on to the midfield. This is a bit more complicated. It's not as clear-cut in my opinion as it would be for the forward line or the defence. But I would go for Salah for sure. Despite the fact that I talked about this in my team selection, I don't think he's as essential as he is in FPL and other fantasy formats. But he's still one of the best options in the game, and especially in midfield at that price. You know, Salah around 11 million. He started around 10 million. It's a really good price for him anyway. And Leroy Sané, he's been so consistent throughout the whole competition. He's the highest scoring midfielder, and he's right up there with the highest scoring players overall. So I would definitely go for Leroy Sané. Now, I would also go for Kingsley Coman because of that fixture against Villarreal, and I would double up on Bayern Munich's defence. We would also have Nicolas Sula, and then there's going to be one more player that we already know from Bayern Munich. So that would be 4 players in total from the Bavarians. And now this is the kind of biggest spot for contention. Phil Foden. You could go for Riyad Mahrez, especially if you have enough money, and he would be my preference. But there's also Dan Juma, who's been so consistent. He's the 3rd highest scoring UCL fantasy midfielder. The Dutchman has only blanked twice throughout the whole campaign, and he's been fantastic for Villarreal. He's on penalties too, so I would consider Danjuma as well, and you could go for him for Phil Foden, and you would also save 1 million in terms of your budget. So let me know, who would you go for, and that might give you enough money to upgrade your second goalkeeper or even your fifth midfielder. In this case, we've gone for Daniel Was. It doesn't really matter. He's the kind of Alvarez replacement, a bench fodder option, an enabler, and then you can focus on the rest of your squad. And it's up to you. If you want to maximize completely your bench and just bolster your squad, then you could just upgrade him, downgrade someone else like Phil Foden. But there is also the possibility, and this is what I've done throughout the whole campaign, have one bench fodder option like Alvarez, who could sometimes come on for a few points, although I don't think Was will do the same thing, and then focus on the rest of your squad and bolster those players instead. So I don't think there's one clear-cut formula, and anything can work. It just depends on what you're preferring. I would go for something like this, although you might want to maximize the midfield even more, because in fantasy games, it typically is the area of the pitch where you can get the most points from. So these are the 5 midfielders we've gone for, but I'll also show you towards the end an alternative where we go for Danjuma instead of Phil Foden. But now let's go to the forward line where things are a little bit more defined. There are no surprises here. Robert Lewandowski has to be in your team. He's the highest scoring player in the entire game. Leroy Sané is just behind him though, to be fair, but I would definitely go for Lewandowski. Do not overthink it. He is probably the best asset left in the game, and he's going to get points and he's going to get goals. It's almost guaranteed at this point. But looking at the others, I think Benzema has to be in it as well, especially with Mbappe and all these other players like Haaland all out, and you want to get maybe a second premium striker. Well, Benzema is the answer, and I think he will do a really good job for you. Now, the third spot, I would ideally want to give to Thomas Müller, but we don't have enough money for that, so we've gone for Luis Diaz, but it ultimately depends on the Liverpool lineup, which we get before the deadline. So check those deadlines, and if Jota starts instead of Diaz, then you can go for Jota. Looking at my team and my budget, I would be a few million off from getting Diego Jota, and in that case you would have to make a downgrade elsewhere, such as Foden to Danjuma or something else. But I would ultimately target the teams you think are going to go through to the next round, because otherwise you're going to have to spend a lot of transfers in order to maximize your squad and to have as many players as possible at your disposal, so you can maximize those points with substitutions and change of captaincy. Now remember, there's only 2 days here in Matchday 9, so you can only change the captaincy once. You only have 2 opportunities. I've gone for Salah as my captain for the first day, and then Lewandowski will be my captain on the second day, just like with my team selection. But this is the 11 I've come up with. I talked about Luis Diaz and Jota. I'm not a big fan of them in UCL Fantasy. They haven't really shown their quality this season in this competition, but they can still do so. And that game against Benfica is a good opportunity for them. But do not underestimate the Portuguese team. They've been very good this season. Now I'm going to show you a few alternatives and how you could improve this. But like I said before, if you have the means and the funds, I would go for Thomas Müller over Luis Diaz or any Liverpool forward. The changes I've just made to this draft include Danjuma coming in for Phil Foden, which I talked about before, Thomas Müller up front instead of Luis Diaz, and then a few changes to the back line. So Ederson instead of Alisson, Robertson instead of Cancelo, and Reece James instead of Thiago Silva. So we still have the double up in Liverpool defence as well as double Manchester City defence. No Cancelo, and he is the highest scoring defender, so that would be a bit of a tricky one, and it's not ideal, but you don't need Joao Cancelo, and if you cover him with 2 Manchester City defensive coverage, then I think that's fine, and you have Robertson and Trent. So this looks pretty good actually, and you might argue this is a better looking draft than the original one. Let me know, which one do you prefer? The first one with Joao Cancelo and all these other players like Phil Foden, or this one where maybe things are a bit more balanced out? We've got Thomas Müller up front. I think this forward line is definitely better. The defence is up for debate. I think both of them look pretty good, and you can't go wrong with either option. So that's it. We've shown you the best wildcard team, and once again I encourage you to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. Are there any other players that you would consider? I think from Benfica, for example, there's Nunez, who's been pretty good this season, and there are a few other options across the team, and in UCL Fantasy there's so many to choose from, so maybe you might find that differential or a few players that can make the difference and that are probably missing out in this wildcard team. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe for new. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a single upload. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check the description below for a link to the Discord server, the UCL Fantasy League, and all of that good stuff. The same goes for the channel memberships and Patreon, so check that out. You can get exclusive early access to all my videos as a member, and thank you very much to everyone who's already signed up. It's much appreciated. All the best of luck for Matchday 9 as well as Game Week 31 for FPL. Check out my content for FPL as well. There's going to be playlists on the channel and you can also see it in the links and the cards in this video. So take care, enjoy the football, and I'll see you next time.